There was a lot of hype leading up to Dragon Quest XI's release. One look at it instantly harks back to the style of 8 on the PS2, which was many's first and favourite game in the series, most likely due to it catering towards Western interests with a symphonic soundtrack and full voice acting. So naturally, people were hoping that 11 would be just as good, and hell, some could even say they were hoping for a return to form after 9 and 10's MMO leanings changing the formula. Unbelievably, this game manages to live up and even surpass my expectations in some ways, and in a time with so many beloved franchises going down the shitter, it's nice to see a series retain what brought people to it in the first place while giving it a new look of paint for the modern era. For the uninformed, Dragon Quest is an RPG series with turn-based combat and a reputation for sticking to its guns and changing its formula very little through each game. Being a Western fan of this franchise is funny at times, as it's very easy to forget how massive a cultural phenomenon it is in Japan, and there hasn't been a bigger reminder of that for me than playing 11 and thinking about how much this must have cost. This game looks absolutely phenomenal, with Akira Toriyama's colourful style never translating better to a 3D environment. The shading and colour palette are top notch and help brighten the most mundane of environments, but it's not like there's a lot of those in this game. The overarching story of 11 is really like any other in the series. There's a big bad evil villain rising up and our main character is the one destined to beat him. You'll spend time travelling the world to gain more information about the impending threat, and you and your companions will be helping townsfolk with any problems they're having, and Square Enix have crafted some superb areas in this game. Each town essentially has its own self-contained story with its own boss attached to it, and structurally this may be quite repetitive, but this familiarity allows you to really just take in the different environments and enjoy how your party responds to everything. There's a superb feature called Party Chat that allows you to talk to your companions at any time, and it's a great way to further immersion and really feel like you're on a fairly light-hearted adventure most of the time when hearing how they react to each part of the story. Whether you're at the fighting town of Octagania or figuring out the mystery of Sniffelheim, there's always something distinctive about each town, and I was always looking forward to finding my next place to explore. Each story arc in the villages probably only takes an hour or two, so you can easily play this game in shortish bursts while still feeling you've made substantial progress story-wise. Towns aren't the only area with improved variety either, with some seriously impressive dungeons to be found. Each one similarly has its own sense of identity, with its theme usually being tied to the boss and story, allowing for some outlandish locations at times. In a series I more or less associate with dungeon crawling, it's nice to see some extra work being put into them, and what better way to complement this than some top-notch combat as well. To be honest, in some of the games I don't think Dragon Quest's combat is anything special. It's a solid system with some simple strategy, but I usually find that RPG veterans will be a bit disappointed with the lack of depth available, depending on which game you play of course. 11 however is a big step up, with the high amount of party members being surprisingly beneficial. Normally you'll get a tanky party member with high damage, someone more suited to magic and healing, etc. We've all played RPGs. But with 8 members to play as in 11, characters manage to take on more specialised roles. The game has 3 support characters for example, but this isn't as excessive as you'd think. Rab is a hybrid character with great heals and high damage, while Sylvando focuses more on nullifying debuffs and stat increases for example. There's a lot of great party combinations, and I never really felt this level of freedom in the other games in the series. Early on in the game I built my team around Eric for example, and yes, I'm calling them by the translated names, sue me, due to the fact that he could deal insane damage to poisoned enemies. By having Sylvando boost his attack, Eric was my go-to damage dealer for bosses, and it was a lot of fun to come up with new ideas for playstyles. Square are seemingly aware of how robust the combat is in this iteration by giving every party member XP whether they were in battle or not, and tied with the ability to switch members in combat, the entire cast will be viable throughout the game. This is helped by a pivotal story moment halfway through the game that basically encourages trying new combinations, but story mentions in this will be light due to spoilers. If you've played the game, you'll know what I'm on about. The PEP system is also a fantastic upgrade over High Tension or Coup de Grace, or whatever you know it as from previous games. From my understanding of it, when you attack or are attacked you have a chance of being pepped up, which will raise your character's attributes as well as give access to some pretty flashy attacks, performed in you or with another pepped up party member. Overall, there's some really cool team-based moves you can pull off, and it's just more interesting than similar systems in the series. The final thing worth noting about combat is that there's a new way to fight known as freeform, which allows you to move during turns. This doesn't change combat in any way, but I can see it making the turn-based combat more accessible for newcomers since they'll have more interactivity during the fights. It's a pretty neat addition and a good move if Square hope to gain more fans in the West, I think. So the characters control well in combat, but how are these people? Is Rab the kind of guy I'd like to have a pint with at my local? Yes, a million times over. The relationship between many of the party members and our main character is far more personal than most in the series, and it makes many of the interactions seem more genuine as a result. Furthermore, just by fleshing out our character through these kind of relationships, we end up with one of the most interesting protagonists we've ever had. Normally they just come across as blank slates, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with a straightforward good versus evil story, but our hero, let's call him 11, has a far more fleshed out backstory integral to the plot. Everything just feels far more personal, and you can relate to 11 easier than with any of the other games I found. The cast's backstories are superb too, varied, well written and well foreshadowed to never make them feel like they were just shoved in for the sake of it. In fact, my favourite party member in the series comes from this game, with character development far beyond what I expected, honestly. I'm sorry for being vague with a lot of this, but I really don't want to spoil anything for new players, as the story and characters have never been better in my opinion. Never Been Better sums up most of this game, to be honest, apart from the MIDI soundtrack on PS4, but that's beating a dead horse at this point. Visually stunning, a quite bold story for Dragon Quest standards filled with fantastic moments, a varied cast with great character arcs and some of the best combat the series has ever had. If you say you're an RPG fan, you owe it to yourself to play this, which in my opinion is one of the best games to come out in a long time.